the last American who remembered the old world. What she told her family before dying 1953, there's a filing cabinet in the Library of Congress that contains the voices of dead Americans, not recordings. Transcriptions. Thousands of pages of handwritten and typed interviews conducted between 1936 and 1940 by government writers who were sent into homes across 24 states with a single instruction: get their stories before they're gone. The program was called the Federal Writers Project, a branch of Roosevelt's New Deal that employed out-of-work journalists, novelists, and researchers to document the lives of ordinary citizens. They collected 2,900 life histories. Then they filed them in the Library of Congress, where they sat mostly unread for nearly 40 years. I found them because I was looking for something else. I was tracing architectural records from the 1870s, trying to understand why so many American courthouses and government buildings from that era feature proportions that don't match the people who supposedly used them. The same question I keep running into. But the deeper I went into those archives, the more I realized the buildings weren't the real story. The people were. Because those 2,900 interviews captured something no textbook ever could. The first-hand memories of Americans who were alive before everything changed, and what they described doesn't match the history we've been taught. Let me explain what I mean by before everything changed. Consider the math. An American born in 1855 who lived to 85, not unusual, would have died in 1940. That means they were alive, speaking, remembering when those government writers knocked on their doors. They would have been children during the 1860s and 1870s. They would have witnessed the most dramatic transition in American history. Not gradually, not over centuries, but within a single lifetime. And their grandchildren, born in the 1920s and 1930s, heard their stories firsthand. Those grandchildren are the last generation that carries the oral history of the old world, and they're almost gone. Mary Kelly was born in 1851 in Southfield, Michigan. She lived to 113 and died in 1964. She was alive before the Civil War and survived long enough to see television in every American home. Maggie Barnes was born to a formerly enslaved woman in the early 1880s and lived to approximately 1115, dying in 1998 in North Carolina. These weren't extraordinary cases. The Gerontology Research Group has verified 16 supercentenarians born in the 1850s alone. Dozens more lived past 100. Hundreds lived past 90. An entire generation of witnesses whose memories spanned two completely different worlds. The government had the chance to record all of them. It recorded 2,900. Then it stopped. The project was defunded in 1939 after congressional hearings, turned over to state control, and effectively shut down. The interviews were boxed up, not published in any accessible form until the 1970s. 30 years of silence around the last first-hand testimony of Americans who remembered what came before. Before what, exactly? That's where October 8, 1871 becomes impossible to ignore. Every American learns about the Great Chicago Fire. Mrs. O'Leary's cow, the wooden city, the rebuilding. What almost no one learns is what happened the same night at the same hour across 3 states simultaneously. In Peshtigo, Wisconsin, a firestorm consumed the entire town in approximately 1 hour. Between 2,000 and 2,500 people perished, making it the deadliest wildfire in American recorded history. The fire burned 1.2 million acres. Survivors describe winds strong enough to lift adults off the ground, flames that moved faster than a person could run, and a heat so intense that people crossing open ground simply burst into flame without being touched by visible fire. Reverend Peter Pernin, the parish priest who survived by submerging himself in the Peshtigo River, published his eyewitness account in 1874. He described a phenomenon that doesn't match any normal wildfire behavior. The available oxygen was consumed so rapidly that people who showed no burns were found deceased, as if the air itself had been weaponized. The fire created its own weather system, a vortex of superheated wind that behaved less like a forest fire and more like something detonating from a central point outward. The same night, Holland, Michigan burned. Manistee, Michigan burned. Port Huron, Michigan was threatened. Across 225 million acres of the upper Midwest, fires erupted simultaneously. The National Weather Service confirms these fires broke out across 3 states at the same time on the same evening. The official explanation is drought, lumber debris, and a cold front with high winds. Reasonable, except for one detail that has nagged researchers since 1883: the simultaneity. In 1883, a hypothesis emerged that fragments of Biela's comet had struck the atmosphere and ignited the fires from above. This theory was revisited in a 1997 documentary and investigated again in 2004 by the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. Witnesses in Chicago reported blue flames burning in basements, a color consistent with unusual chemical combustion, not wood fires. The theory has never been